and Vitality by Dr. Sophie. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Nikolas Epp. Welcome to this episode. So, Dr. Epp studied chemistry with a focus on quantum mechanics, obtained his doctorate in cell biology with distinction at the German Cancer Research Center, Heidelberg, and concluded research at the ETH. Following his academic career, Nikolas held various management positions in the chemical and medical technology industries. There, he held various management positions and was instrumental in winning 2 innovation awards. Over the years, he has continued his education in areas of body-mind connection and consciousness. Recently, in collaboration with the St. Gallen Business School, he published a research paper on how unconscious stress affects organizations and how it can be changed. In his practice, he works with his clients on deep subconscious issues. He gives courses for companies and private individuals on the topic of unconscious stress and awareness. Welcome to this podcast, Dr. Epp. I'm so excited for this podcast today. We're going to be putting it on YouTube, but it's also going to various podcast channels. And this podcast is so relevant for everybody. Can you please explain the concept of the unconscious stress model and how it impacts our overall well-being?
Absolutely. But before we dive into unconscious stress, Sophie, I think because in my experience, there's a lot of misconception about what stress is in general. Let's talk a little bit about stress first.
I agree.
Let me ask you, were you stressed today? No, think about those situations. You remember them?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, was there a predator involved? Bunch of criminals? Natural disaster?
Thankfully not.
So maybe your stress response was absolutely inadequate. And this is what I mean, that people don't know what stress really is. The stress reaction is initially a biological survival life insurance. So whenever we are stressed, we perceive a threat or a danger in the outer world, our stress response is activated to prepare us for that situation. Because, when there's really a life-threatening situation, it's very adequate that we react with stress. But it's not when we are stressed about, the normal things we are stressed in modern life, like tight deadlines, maybe an unhappy customer, money, unpleasant situation with relatives. I don't know what you were stressed about, like setting up a podcast, for
That's right.
example. We could. And what people are not aware of is that for the body, it doesn't really make a difference whether there's a real threat or we perceive threat just by things that, are not really life-threatening to us, because biologically the same things are happening. And that means, and I think this is very relevant for the field you work on, where everyone wants to look young and healthy. When we are in stress, and for humans, stress means we are in a non-positive emotion. So whenever you are anxious, worrisome, jealous, troubled, then your body is in stress. And biologically, your body prepares you to fight a life-threatening situation. So your cardiovascular system is ramped up. Your digestive system is shut down. Your immune system is shut down to provide all the energy needed to fight that potential threat. And it's, of course, very intelligent from the body to do so if there's really a threat. But there is no energy for repair and growth for your body. In my experience, people are 60, 70, 80% of their time in stress without even knowing. And this is where it becomes very harmful for your health and for your longevity. Do you know what death reason number 1 is in the world? It's cardiovascular disease.
Heart attacks, yeah.
Yeah, because, short-term stress, every organism can bear it. But when our cardiovascular system is ramped up all the time, at some point it breaks down. You know what death reason number 2 is? It's a group of cancer diseases. And cancer is, better than I potentially, that when old cells get crazy and they replicate in a non-controlled way, and that happens many, many times throughout the day in our bodies. And usually our immune system targets those cells and kills them. But when our immune system is shut down continuously, then the system won't work and we cannot catch the cancer. So there's really a direct impact on our enduring activated stress response and our health.
So stress is a good thing because sometimes we have to literally fight or flight a life-threatening situation. But in this modern life, we're constantly stressed from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, and sometimes even during our sleep. So putting our body through that much stress and those constant biological changes that result in our cardiovascular system constantly being ramped up and us having those hormones of stress, that leads us to becoming sick physically and mentally. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Physically, mentally as well. And, the health component is just one side of the coin.
Yeah.
What I observe way more, and also why my clients come to me, is more the behavioral side of stress.
What do you mean
When
by that?
we are bodies like a binary system, like a computer. When we are in stress, then we picture that there's a line in front of you. What is relevant for you? It's you, right? It's your
Right.
immediate survival. So people in stress, they don't trust, they don't communicate well, they have a very narrow focus just
Right.
by biology.
Reactive.
And many people try to be super creative when they're in stress. That doesn't work, just by the basic mechanisms of how this body works. People don't trust. People are not open for change. And what we see, for example, and there was a recent study by Oxford Business School, that 70% of transformations fail. Every large organization is constantly transforming, but 70% of those initiatives fail. And they look deeper into it. Why is it that way? And it is because, in a nutshell, the people are not ready for the change. And they're not ready for the change because biologically they are stressed. Their system is not open to change. You know the term comfort zone, right?
Right.
It doesn't mean that you're well. It just means that it's familiar. So we are happy being inside our dark cave, and we don't dare to go out because the lion might lurk around the corner.
And that lion today is thought of somebody said something to us, or the thought of I have to get up and be somewhere at a certain time, or the thought of an examination or something like that. A thought
Exactly.
of something that may never ever happen.
Exactly. And this is it. What makes us humans different from all other mammals? We have a further developed brain. And thanks to our frontal lobe, we can make thought as real as happenings in our life.
Right.
And when we have worrisome thoughts about an exam, about the result, about financial issues, about the traffic, about that your favorite sport club might lose, whatever it is, when we accept and surrender into those thoughts, our body signals in a way that induces the stress response.
Right.
That's what I said earlier. For modern humans, stress does not have a lot to do, or, their tight deadlines. It is when I'm in a non-positive emotion.
Right.
Then the body is in the stress response. And indeed, as you said, it is induced by thoughts alone.
I'm guessing social media is making it worse for a lot of us because people want to portray their best life or a life that is not true. So a lot of us go on social media and see that, and we have a stress response to that, thinking, what am I doing in my life?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yet, I like to say that it is never about the environment.
It's interesting. So it's all about what goes on in our head rather than what goes on outside.
Exactly. Whenever you feel non-positive because of something outside of you, you're actually victim to your environment, or you use your environment to keep yourself in stress. And we can talk about the addictive component of cortisol in a second. But it is not about switching.
To talk about that because I think a lot of us are addicted to stress and to drama and to things like that.
We are, and it's it's scientifically proven.
Before we go into that, may I ask you though, exactly what you mean by unconscious stress? Because you mentioned importance of understanding conscious, preconscious, and unconscious mind. Can you please elaborate on how this understanding can enhance our personal health and well-being?
Absolutely. So going back to Freud, he described different layers of human consciousness. And although he never used an iceberg, I really like to use the iceberg in order to have a visual for that. There is the part of the iceberg which is on top of the waterline. That is our conscious mind. You and I, we are now talking in our conscious mind. That's the realm of the analytical mind as well. And then just below the waterline, it's something that Freud called the preconscious. And the preconscious is the part of the human consciousness where our habits sit. He called it the waiting room of human consciousness, where habituated thoughts, actions, and feelings wait to be rediscovered by the analytical mind.
I like the idea of the waiting room. It very much reminds me of a clinic where patients are sitting, and then you have patients inside the room as well.
And I'll give you an example in a second. Down there, deep down in the iceberg, that's the subconscious realm of our consciousness. And we don't have access to this part with our analytical mind.
Okay.
The preconscious part we can access through self-observation. And to give you an example, you drive a car.
Yeah.
And you might remember when you learned driving a car, it was very demanding. You needed to do everything consciously. Traffic signs, brake, changing gears, other cars. Exactly. Which is a sign of a habit. We do things in an automated way.
Autopilot.
But you could sit in the car and observe yourself what is happening all the time. You could observe yourself and, I'm noticing this traffic sign. Now I'm adapting. I need to check my velocity. I need to check my gears. I need to check if someone is behind me. And this is because this is information that's stored in the preconscious mind.
Right.
So we have the conscious, preconscious, and subconscious part of human consciousness. And when I say unconscious stress, I mean that we got so habituated in so many automated stress responses. For example, automatically getting upset about the neighbor slamming the door in the morning, automatically reacting in a frustrated way when you miss, the next tube that you wanted to take. Or when you automatically, without even thinking about getting upset about the weather.
Okay. That's a very good example, because no baby or child or a toddler wakes up and says, oh my God, it's raining. I don't like it.
No.
We teach them that. So that's a very interesting example you just gave.
We teach them that.
As parents, that's right.
Starting from like 12, 13, but now we 12 more into brain development, we start conditioning ourselves. And this actually brings different levels of consciousness and stress together, because we said earlier that we can induce as humans the stress response by thought alone. What is a thought? Something very immaterial. You might know this. You have a great idea, new thought, but then you don't write it down and it's gone. Right. Best case, the thought is an electrochemical signal happening in your brain. But when you keep having thoughts in a repeated way, you form neural networks in your brain. Those are nerve cells that shake hands. For the non-scientists here, nerve cells, they look like octopuses, and, they have nucleus and have arms. And when they shake hands, this is what represents our thoughts. And when we have the same thought over and over again, we have a lot of shaking hands up there.
Sure.
We really build a solid network. And those thoughts start running automatically.
Right.
And subsequently, we have the feelings that come with those thoughts. Being not enough, being angry, being guilty, feeling angry, feeling not enough. And like driving in the car, our body is so objective. It really doesn't matter for our body what we train ourselves often. Driving, being hard on ourselves, being angry, being mad, we become it. It becomes part of our identity when we become unconscious about it. And to make it more tangible, I'm sure people in your environment that that, they're always difficult to talk with, or for every problem, for every solution they have a problem, or that person is always scared and anxious. They might not realize for themselves, because usually no one gets up in the morning and says, hey, today I'm being really anxious. Today I'm really, really narrow-minded. Today I'm not creative. And that's the tricky part that I really realized, and that what also motivated me to educate more about unconscious stress. Because first, as we said earlier, people don't know what stress is, biological, life insurance. And second, they know way less what unconscious stress is.
Right.
But it impacts our life so much, and the life of the loved ones around us.
So you're saying that our thoughts and our beliefs over time become strengthened in our brain because we're constantly thinking the same thoughts, going through the same beliefs, and we're repeating the same experiences that we've gone through in the past in our mind for ourselves. And these are becoming like building blocks. And these building blocks automatically result in unconscious stress for us.
When the thoughts lead to feelings that are non-positive, absolutely.
Right. So we have conscious stress, for example, we had difficulty coming online. That's a conscious stress.
Were you in a non-positive emotion?
Right.
That's the question.
For a bit, yes.
Okay, then it was stressful. Because it's not about having a challenging situation.
Right.
It is really about the emotion.
So it all goes back to the emotion rather than
It all
the
goes
actual
back to the
thought.
emotion. So I knew we would fix this. I was
Right.
looking forward to recording this. For me,
Yes.
it was, yes, we need to sort things out, but I
Yes.
was not in a non-positive emotion.
So you're saying because you were not in a non-positive emotion, you were not stressed.
Exactly.
Fair
And that
enough.
is really the number one misconception that I'm experiencing when I talk with clients or, generally with people is that, and by the way, I think also all the stress statistics are wrong, is we are in a non-positive emotion. Then sympathetic nervous system is switched on. There are high levels of cortisol and the body is fighting.
How does unconscious stress affect our daily life?
One visual that I like to use is like in modern office environments, but also within our families. Picture we are zebras running from a line for 80% of our time. And this is us working together, living together. The consequence of stress or of humans in stress is also that we're not present. Because in stress, we constantly want to control and predict what's coming next. And you might know this either by multitasking, you're not present with one thing, or you are in a meeting and you think about the next meeting. That are signs of unconscious stress because you're not here in the present moment. And it means that actually we live not really the best version of ourselves. We're not creative. We're not open. We are not communicative. We don't trust. Look at the kids again. You brought the kids earlier, right? When you look at young kids, they just play with each other. They're explorative. They don't mind failing. They don't mind what others think. That's our natural state.
They don't think how they're looking like or what they're saying. That's right.
No.
They're just enjoying life.
And that is our natural state. That is a human in flow, which is the opposite of stress. We're in stress or in flow. So you can dream for yourself what you all miss by not being in flow, by not being present with what you're doing, by not being present with the people you work with, the people you interact with privately. Not talking about the negative health impacts that come with stress.
Sure.
And, I use this often with my clients. Most people, and I work a lot with high-performing people, but it's true for all levels in society. Again, because this machinery called body is super objective and the same mechanics apply for everyone. It's like we sit in a train at a very high speed and we don't see the landscape clearly. This is us in our stressed life. You don't get it. And it happens out of habituation. You're not even aware of it. You think you're effective, you think you do your things well, and at some point you just ask yourself, hey, what's up with me? And teaching people to become in their day-to-day life more conscious about what's happening and making people aware how big the impact is of being aware of what they're thinking, step by step, slows that train down. And when that train slows down, you start seeing the landscape. And this is usually a moment when many people say, I don't like what I'm seeing. But it is instrumental for change, for true change. And that's like a garden. Finally, you see the weeds and whatever is there that you don't want to have, so you can take it out and think about more consciously what thoughts/plans you want to cultivate in your garden.
Right. So you're saying awareness itself is sufficient for us to come out of that hyper-focused state and expand a little bit our awareness and what we're looking at to be able to change our patterns and be more present in the present moment.
Absolutely. And I say it with a caveat because usually when I start working with people on that, they want too much. I want to be a better manager. I want to be a better mother. I want to be a better professional. I want to be a better whatever. And when you picture those, items as a folder in your computer, it contains of many subfolders, many sub-habits. And when normal people, and I include myself, when we at the beginning of this journey, we don't have a profoundly trained day-to-day awareness. So when we try to change big things at once with this approach through awareness, usually we fail because we don't catch all the thoughts that are happening subconsciously during the day. It's like a sport, actually. When you start kickboxing or whatever, you don't start with the most fancy advanced kicks. You start with basic foot and nothing more or nothing less when it comes to awareness. Small steps, small tangible steps, like in business, are highly recommendable. But yes, I think that on the conscious, preconscious level, meaning the realms of our consciousness that we can access by ourselves, awareness and applying tools that enhance awareness in our day-to-day life are easy to learn and super successful to apply on. And then you have profound changes, and it's not complicated. In my ideal world, this would be mandatory to be taught at schools for kids around 13, 14, because it's so easy.
You know, what is very exciting is the fact, and this is a running theme in my podcast, and you probably will see it with every guest that I have, that we have so much information free of charge at our fingertips that we can empower ourselves to change our lives and to thrive and to be the best version of ourselves. And you just told us all that we don't need to necessarily go and pay thousands of pounds, give our power away to somebody else, but by simply bringing awareness to our each moment and to our life, we can start making changes right now. Right now, doesn't matter what we're doing as we're listening to this podcast, but by bringing that awareness, we can start making changes that will result into massive life change and improvement of quality of our lives.
You know, one challenge is that people believe their thoughts.
We all do. I think this is very interesting, because nobody ever tells us our thoughts are not true. But
no, you know, it's when we induce thought by stress alone. And maybe to add on, why do we choose to have way more stressful thoughts than non-stressful thoughts? Because cortisol, one of the stress hormones that is secreted when the stress response is induced, is highly addictive because the body gets used to this rush of energy. And and you might notice when you sit down and you just focus on your breathing and you want to calm yourself down, then a lot of thoughts come up. And this is the body going on rehab, you know, going on like detoxification and signals to the brain, hey, make yourself some, you know, worrisome, anxious thoughts that I feel my familiar feeling of being stressed. And we start confusing this with our identity. It's like our character is like a hard drive on your computer with many folders. Each of your habits represents one folder and comes with thoughts. And we think this is who we are.
yeah.
But ultimately, majority of those folders is what we trained ourselves to be. And we tend to believe that this is like the God-given certainty of who we are.
Or patterns and programmings that come from our culture, from parents, grandparents, society, school, etc.
And fair enough, you know, the picture is bigger than just our own conditioning.
Right.
And I don't know if you want to go there, but I have a very distinct, you know, picture of how this hard drive of Nikolas is filled and yours and everyone's. And it really starts way before we start having our own conscious thoughts. But then we leave the conscious preconscious level of, then we're really in the deep subconscious realm. But what we can always do is to reassess how we want to think in certain situations. Let's make it tangible. I have an appointment at a dentist, and I might think, for sure, this is going to hurt. Why haven't I cleaned my teeth properly? I'm so stupid. I knew that this day would come, and I might be avoiding. I might act in a way that I postpone the meeting. I call the dentist and say, hey, you know, something came up and I need to postpone. And I feel anxious, unrested, and stressed about it. And now circling back to the social media, it's not about the environment. It's not about the dentist. But is it possible that I could be in a calm emotion when it's about the dentist visit? Absolutely. Absolutely. As a calm person, I would just have different thoughts about the dentist. If we find something, then better now than later. I love to take care about my health, and my teeth are so important for me. I'm so grateful that I can afford going to the dentist, for example. And I hope it becomes clear that when I have those thoughts in my mind, then I'm not stressed about going to the dentist.
I think a couple of things come to mind here for me. One, some people have past traumas that result in their thoughts and feelings and the patterns and the behavior. So some people do truly need to work with therapists and professionals to overcome that trauma and those feelings and thoughts and emotions. The second thing that I found very interesting and exciting in the example you gave is no matter the stressful situation in life, whether it's a speech you're giving, you're going to the doctor, etc., change the conversation you're having in your head with yourself from stress into excitement. Make it something exciting for yourself. Is that what you're trying to say?
Exciting, calm, joyful. Yeah, the key is that, and I'm with you with the trauma. When there is trauma in a person, I think there are different modalities
Correct.
which
For
should be
true
used
phobia.
first before you start working on, unconscious stress conditioning. But in my example, I assumed that there was no trauma
Or true
associated with
phobia.
it.
Correct.
And now what are the thoughts? The issue with let's staying with the example, with my old thoughts about the dentist is that I had them a lot of times. I got really good at them and they run automatically, which doesn't mean that they're true. And the new thoughts, they will feel very unfamiliar, very uncommon, and I will not believe them initially. My body will not believe it initially.
But
Yet,
the more you practice,
and it is my decision as a conscious being, how do I want to think about certain situations? How do I want to think about my coworker? How do I want to think about the traffic? How do I want to think about politics? Again, key is not the thing in the environment. And the difference between me being stressed in a specific situation and another person being relaxed with the very same situation is 99% how this person thinks versus I'm thinking.
so we're not indifferent to life situations, you're saying, but we can manage our own thoughts, emotions, and feelings towards the same situations in life as everybody else.
Absolutely.
And by
This is
doing
one of-
so, then we change our own biology and we're empowered and we're in charge of our own health, longevity, and vitality.
Ultimately, yes. And we were the ones who conditioned ourselves, and we are also the ones who can recondition ourselves. And this is something, very established, for example, in behavioral therapy. But there, usually people only go when they really have psychological issues.
Right.
Many people, basically all people, suffer from high levels of stress and unconscious stress. And I dream of a world where people understand better the mechanics, the biological mechanics that take place when the stress response is active, and understand better how their own machinery works. Because then people become empowered. People realize, okay, my life is not at risk. I use this situation to reform my addiction to stress. I don't want that. I don't want to harm myself. I don't want to harm others. I'm the only person who can change this by changing my thoughts about the situation.
Right.
Situation by situation by situation. This term psychological safety, it's a big buzzword here in industry in Switzerland. It's clearly an inside job. I don't think that any corporation will achieve this by implementing a certain structure. When people are conditioned to use whatever they find in their environment to be anxious and worrisome, there is no ideal structure outside of that.
Yeah, ever, anywhere.
People need to change their thinking.
I mean, on that note, can you please share some practical tools or techniques you recommend for accessing and utilizing the preconscious mind, or what we're just talking about? How can make this practical for everybody day to day? So we said the first step is awareness. What do we do next?
Well, what does awareness mean practically, actually? It's a nice word, but let's make it really tangible. The most underrated tool, in my opinion, and also in this context, is breathing. When does breathing take place? What I want to hear is that it takes place in the present moment. And I'm sure you heard many times that, there are a lot of good breathing exercises and that breathing calms people down. But very few people know why. And the first hands-on tool that I want to give to your audience is that they understand why putting one's attention on your own breath is so important. And it's not because of the breathing, but when you put your attention on your own breath without trying to influence it or alter it, you bring your attention back to the present moment. And this is why putting one's attention on the breath calms people down. Because when we center ourselves in the now, our system realizes that there is no threat right now. And that's why it calms down. And when we want to start working with awareness as a tool, then it's very important that we have a tool that brings us into the present moment. Because otherwise, our mind is elsewhere, either in the future or in the past. So I highly encourage, and I do this, by the way, as often as I think about it, putting my attention on my breathing for 2, 3, 4 cycles of breath without trying to achieve anything, just to bring myself back to the present moment. Because even though I work a lot with consciousness, I know that my system by default wants to go back. to the future or the past out of conditioning. So now, and I encourage when you or your audience want to start playing with those tools, pick one very specific example that happens ideally daily that bring you in a non-positive emotion. And there is no example that might be too small or too insignificant for you. Because biologically, stress is like pregnancy. You're not a little pregnant, you're not a little stressed. It's either you are or you're not. So whichever situation you can transition from stress to flow is a great win for you. So let's make something up. You get upset when your neighbor slams the door in the morning. Let's take a snapshot and then become aware of your automated program. What thoughts come up? Observe all the thoughts that you have related to that situation. How do you act? And how do you feel? That is observing your habit stored in the preconscious mind. Draw it and then think about how do you want to think about in that situation. That will not change. Okay, maybe calm, relaxed. You just want to not be influenced by it. And now it's a little role play. And this is usually the hardest part that needs a lot of training, because how do you as a character think and act in that situation in order to feel calm? And for those new thoughts, you don't have neural networks yet. That's why it's hard. And that's why people usually give up there. But it's really game changing.
Right.
Because you become a person who is really relaxed in that specific situation, and then you just need to practice it. And that's actually applied neuroplasticity, our ability to continuously change and then it is about stopping the old thoughts when they come up, when it's maybe the neighbor slams the door at 9, and already 5 to 9, your brain starts, now he's going to do it again. Now he's will come. But then you need, because you're aware now of this program, I stay with my own new thoughts. And with this super simple technique, you can transition specific situations. That is the direct outcome. But in my experience, the bigger win is that you train your day-to-day awareness. You become way more aware of what you are thinking all day, which gives you actually the possibility to consciously, during your active day life, to choose to think differently in other situations as well.
Right. So mental rehearsal, rehearsing, becoming a different person.
It can be supported with mental rehearsal. That's already the next level. But just preparing yourself of how you want to be. You and I, when we learned languages at school, there was no mental rehearsal, right? We just learned the vocabulary with vocabulary cards or whatever. Just the act of becoming aware of how we want to think, who we want to be, and reminding ourselves about that does already a lot. And most importantly, it's about applying it, because writing the thoughts down that you want to have, doing mental rehearsal, all of this is a preparation of the real life event, for the real life event. And this is when it starts counting. In the situation, really reacting differently, thinking differently, and subsequently feeling differently.
And every little win counts.
Every little win counts, because biologically, all the networks that are responsible for all your automated stress responses in your brain, they're all connected. It's like a huge web, and it really doesn't matter where you start weakening this web.
I love this.
You weaken the whole structure.
Have you watched Inside Out?
Yes.
Have you watched Inside Out too?
Not yet.
Okay,
I want to.
I'm not going to spoil it. Please
Okay.
watch it, everybody. It has
Yeah.
all these concepts for teenagers and kids. And I wish I watched it when I was younger, and I think everybody should, adults and kids. So I'm going to leave it at that. No spoilers. So time
Thank you. You remind me.
Time is a little short. Thank you so much. I just know you do a lot of training, Nikolas, and I want to know how your approach to mental training differs for individuals in sports compared to corporate environments, compared to other individuals.
In essence, they don't differ much, because when you also go to my website, my lead-in sentences, with our body, we were gifted with a high-performing quantum computer, unfortunately without manual. And basically, it's a big part of my work to teach important parts of this manual. And when it comes to sport, like golf or archery, where I give training courses for mental training approaches to those sports, it's easier because it's very specific. It's about specific techniques. It's easy because it's specific about some tournament situations and the internal pressure that active players have to cope with. When it comes to corporate environments, businesses usually think that they have so specific individualized challenges. And it might be true in the outer world, but ultimately and I really hold this, that every issue in industry is caused to a big extent by unconscious stress of the employees. So ultimately, it is always teaching people to become aware of their unconscious stress, teach them tools how to overcome it. And when you do this in a team environment, you see the team dynamic changing. And be it a team or be it, a couple, because it's also a beautiful thing for couples, the communication improves. Because we still remind to be quite blind for ourselves, quite unconscious. And other people see non-constructive behaviors in ourselves better than we often do. And it's good when we can help people to help us becoming more aware of it, that we can change it. And of course, when it comes to corporate, to company settings, it's also important to implement this knowledge in a way that it is implemented in a sustainable way. What I mean by this is, many companies, they spend a lot of money on, like coping with stress, dealing with stress and impact of stress, how they can improve it. And I think many are disappointed because they treated the symptoms. They treated the symptoms as long as they didn't teach people how to overcome their own stress reaction. And like I said earlier, it's comparable to a sport. And you get good at a sport when you have the possibility to train it and to continuously train it. So when I work with companies, I consult them in implementing processes by which they can really keep those easy tools alive, even down to one-on-one meetings and personal objectives that I might have.
Amazing. Nikolas, thank you so much for your time. Any final thoughts? I will share your details, your website details, and other information down in the description box below. But any final thoughts before we wrap up? I absolutely loved our conversation. We can carry on for much longer, but I know attention of our listeners is not. So I'd like to keep it short enough so we don't lose them.
Of course. Yes, maybe one last thought, because when we look at today's world, there's so much conflict, and people are not aware of how stress is connected with all of this conflict. And I personally worked a lot on my inner peace. And when we are in stress, we co-create this conflict. We're not creating peace. And, it's said so well by this quote: when we want to have peace in the world, we should have peace in the countries. When we want to have peace in the countries, we should have peace in the cities. In order to have peace in the cities, we should have peace in the neighborhoods. In order to have peace in the neighborhoods, we should have peace in every house. How do we obtain peace in every house? By having peace in every heart. And being aware of what stress is, taking it seriously to bring oneself in a state of peace, meaning not stress, is, I think, the only way to go how we collectively can create a more peaceful world together. And this is what everyone can do. And this actually drives me a lot why I educate about unconscious stress.
Thank you very much for everything you do. And thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to speaking with you soon again.
Likewise, Supi, likewise. And thank you very much for the invitation. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You too. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.